And regardless of our color, regardless of our conviction and whatnot, we're part of this community. And I'm so delighted that the man is going to lead us into the 21st century is here with us, the governor-elect, Pedro P. Tenorio. And I think, Governor, before too long, Howard Williams later on this afternoon is going to start identifying some of the challenges that the Commonwealth is going to be facing. There's no doubt that those challenges are going to be difficult, and those challenges are going to be our challenges. And we need to look within ourselves that no challenge cannot be overcome. We have proven it by negotiating a very unique relationship, a relationship that was unprecedented, as Howard had pointed out. But more importantly, we also have to understand that we are part of a great country. The United States of America is our country, and we are citizens of this marvelous nation. We are part of it. We're a small community, but we have a significant contribution to the nation as a whole. And we play a very important role in our area. The initial interest of the United States in our area is basically strategic. And if we look at it, that may not be too valuable for us, but it is valuable to the United States. We got to understand that one of the legacy that we have is that the surrender of the Japanese came as a result of the action that was taking place here with the Enola Gay and the forward front of the military toward the invasion of Japan. We play a critical role. But more importantly, I think also we need to know that as a group of people, we are very important, not only to ourselves, but to the nation. And we have a course of action, we have a covenant, and I consider that to be a living document. I'm delighted that we have Justice Villagomez here and the former Justice of the Supreme Court, the Lieutenant Governor, that had the crack to interpret the laws under the Constitution of the Northern Marianas. But this is the opportunity that has been given to us. We find Pete Tenorio going to be leading us in the 21st century, and we have the judiciary, and I recognize a number of legal people here that's going to be, you're going to have a really magnificent, a marvelous time helping us develop into our future. This morning, I was having coffee with a friend of mine, and we were talking about the success of the Commonwealth. And sometimes we use the yardstick of the prosperity of a community as a measure of the success of the community. And he looked at me and said, Eddie, I represent a shipping company, and we lost a number of containers. And would you believe it, one of the containers contained garment material that is worth $2 million. And I said to myself, gosh, back when we negotiated in the Commonwealth, the gross island product was less than $1 million. It cost the Commission not more than $1 million to negotiate the relationship. And I just handed Howard Williams the financial resources that the federal government had extended to us under the provision of Section 702 of the Covenant. We have received so far more than $700 million of constant dollar. Some of you, especially David Sablan, is aware that the gross island product of the island now is $2.2 billion. There are only 25,000 of us that are residents and citizens of the United States here. And of course, we have 30,000, 40,000 of alien workers that are helping us develop our community. And this is an incredible progress that probably we say. But I think also when we look back, progress always inevitably brings in challenges and problems. But isn't it wonderful that it is our community, it's our Commonwealth, and it is us that would be addressing those problems. I have faith in my own community and in you, the beneficiary and the recipient of the Commonwealth, that we will continue to grow, we will continue to meet all these challenges, and I have no doubt in the world that the Northern Marianas will be a successful and a wonderful place to bring our future generation. And I thank you for joining us so that we can discuss some of these problems and some of these challenges, but more importantly, I think we are today celebrating a Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ed Pangolin, your $25,000 is up, by the way. Actually, I think everybody would agree that $25,000 has paid huge dividends. However, it was expended at that time. We have three more panelists to hear from, and we'll try to keep as close to the time schedule as we can. Our next commentator and panelist is former Lieutenant Governor Pete A. Tenorio. Pete.
Thank you, John. This is not a prepared statement, it's just some notes to rebut some of Ed Pangolin's statement and to also rebut some of Howard Wilson's previous statement. Seriously, I came here looking for an ideal, thinking of whether or not there is such a thing as an ideal political status relationship with any nation. And I came to the conclusion that there's none. And whether we have free association with the United States, we have concrete examples that not everything is working good over there in FAS, nor is Palau's relationship with the federal government working ideally. So why should we expect the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas covenant relationship to work ideally as the way we want it to be? I think if it works so ideally, then we won't have a problem, and we won't be here talking about how to define or design methods to accomplish and to resolve problems. And this is why politics and political history is interesting. I came here this morning also to, maybe it's better not to respond to Howard Wilson's suggested inquiries and questions, but rather to also share with you some of my experiences, some of my thoughts about the covenant. 22 years ago, we signed our personal copies of the covenant here in the yard of Royal Tiger Hotel after we had signed the official document in Mount Carmel in 1975. And a couple of things that I like to point out, which Howard did not really acknowledge in his summary of the history of the covenant negotiation, were some of the roles that were played by the local people here. And I see some of the ladies that 20 years ago then I share experience with them by sitting down with them in some of the public facilities, community centers in the villages to talk about the covenant. I was designated the chairman of the Marianas Political Status Commission Public Education Chairman. So I spend a lot of my time at nights going around the village hearing expression of views and comments about the covenant, and also providing them with some information about what the covenant is all about. But most of the time, I remembered being confronted by a bunch of very intelligent ladies that were well organized. Some of them are here this morning, and they were the ones that actually made our entire political education much more meaningful, because the questions that were raised and comments that were made and the challenges by these ladies were extremely useful in trying to develop a strategy as to how best we can get this covenant through Congress, and of course through the plebiscite which was held subsequently. So that was a very very important aspect of the covenant history, the participation of the local people in learning about the covenant and making decisions not based on a blanket approach like I voted for it because my family told me to do so, but rather based on informed decisions by themselves, seeking to learn about what the covenant is all about. The other aspect that I thought would be very interesting for you folks is to learn a little bit about the covenant's process through the approval process by the United States Congress. This to me was a very significant aspect of the history because without the congressional approval, we won't have a covenant. And as Howard Williams had indicated, if we had robbed Philip Burton the wrong way at the time we were talking about taxes, he would just stood up and say, forget it. And when Phil Burton talked, everybody in Congress listened. And that's how critical his role was in the passage of the covenant. So, and further to illustrate his power, he managed to, Phil Burton was the chairman of the Insular and Interior Committee. He managed to have the Congress, the House of Representatives, pass the covenant within a 3-month period after the hearing. And he did not ask for a voice vote or individual vote. He utilized what is called unanimous consent approval. And some of you probably are not aware of this, but I heard that on a unanimous consent call in the U.S. House, if one person says no, then the whole thing is dead. But Philip Burton took the chance to subject the covenant approval that way because he was that confident. And when the vote was called and there was a unanimous consent call and it was voted on, the covenant passed. Then one lady from Rhode Island by the name of Representative Fenwick, who happened to be smoking pipe, and she was busy lighting her pipe tobacco while this discussion was going on in the House floor. When the Speaker says unanimous consent was voted on in favor of H.R. 549, a covenant to establish a commonwealth and so forth, and hit the table with a gavel, and then this representative from Rhode Island says, Mr. Chairman, what's happening? Before she knew it, the covenant passed. And that's how effective Mr. Burton was, seriously. In the Senate, it was a different story. And again, I want to I'll give you a little bit of a detail as to what really happened there because a lot of characters played a major role in trying to defeat the covenant. And there were also a lot of dedicated individuals from the senators that actually managed to confront these guys and were able to rebut their arguments, and the covenant ended up being passed by the Senate by a very slim margin. Some of the characters that are considered not in our favor are the following people. One by the name of Gary Hart from Colorado, who almost became a president, except that he had a little problem with a little pleasure craft called a monkey business. Anyhow, he was a major character in that particular congressional Senate vote. Senator Hart was very, very much against the covenant. And if he had his way, he would have us being a part of some other territory or dependent territory for the next 100 years. He just didn't like the military because he had figured that the military was behind, the U.S. military was behind the covenant agreement because he was very anti-war. He's a dove in the Congress, together with Senator Pell, whom I had a personal experience with when I was a member of the Congress of Micronesia and went there to testify on behalf of the covenant. He was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. And he asked me point blank while I was up there sitting as a witness, Mr. Tenorio, Mr. Senator Tenorio, where did you get your money to attend this hearing? And the background to that question was to see whether or not it was a U.S. taxpayers' money that got me to testify. And I told him, well, it was actually money from the taxpayers of the Marianas District, sir. And I came here to testify on their behalf, so he kept quiet. Other guys that were quite instrumental in almost having the covenant defeated was a person like Senator McGovern, who went on to become a candidate for president. He got lost, he was defeated. he was very much against it, together with Senator Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was not vocal, but he was quite influential, and I think he used this, I don't know what you call assignment type of thing to tell somebody else to represent his view, and he was against it, together with Frank Church. The rest of the other people that I remember to be very, very instrumental in helping us out, passing the covenant in the Senate, which was a very tough job. Personalities like Senator Scoop Jackson from Washington, who was the chairman then of the Senate, I believe it was Energy or Interior Committee, subcommittee, and Bennett Johnston from Louisiana, Sam Nunn also from Georgia. We had Hollings from North Carolina, and the funny thing about Senator Holling was he asked me when I went to visit him, I said, do I have any constituent back in Micronesia? I said, why, sir? He says, because there's a North Carolina and South Carolina there. You know, at that time, the Eastern Carolina and Western Carolina, Yap and Palau. So he asked me, I said, well, I'm not so sure about that. I'm saying all of this because I think it's useful to reflect on some of these experiences that may not be written in the history books of the official covenant documents, but nevertheless, they are, to me at least, a very important aspect of the whole process of getting the covenant through the United States. It's not just the hard work of the Status Commission that negotiated the covenant with the U.S. and Ambassador Williams, and it's not just the hard work of the lawyers. We have to give a lot of credit to the Congress then at that time in the United States, who were divided, at least visibly divided in my own opinion, as to what to do with the covenant. When the covenant was being debated in the Armed Services Committee, Gary Hart stood up and told the Armed Services Committee, wait a minute, you know, you don't know what you guys are committing the United States taxpayers into. Tremendous amount of millions of dollars every year, guaranteed financial assistance, federal programs to be extended, food stamps, and the whole works. And Gary Hart reminded me, and I'll never forget his quote, and I still have it in my brain after 25 years or 22 years. And what he said was, making reference to the amount of federal dollars that will be coming to the Northern Marianas as a Commonwealth, says the obligation of the United States is just like the nose of a camel under a tent, just like the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. So I coined that phrase for him. I don't know whether he remembered that, but ask Eddie, and he'll tell you that it's in the Senate legislative history. And this again, it just indicated to me that, you know, it's not all rosy, all nice in the U.S. Congress. There are people that hate us because some of them even think that, why should we become United States citizens just because our people voted 78.8%? You know who said that? Gary Hart. I mean, Pell. Claiborne Pell from Rhode Island, Senator Pell. I mean, this is the kind of, mentality that also existed in the U.S. Senate, so it's not all that nice, and maybe that attitude continues to filter down to the present day, where there are just people there that they may look and act humane and considerate and genuine, but somewhere, somehow, deep down, they have different feelings about us, and I'm very skeptical about some of these things. But you know, I hate to say it, but I am skeptical and not too optimistic that that the U.S. Congress will continue to regard the Commonwealth as a favorite or as a pet project as it used to regard at one time. We were called at one time, referred to as the most successful democratic government experiment in the entire Pacific. That may be true 15 years ago, but not anymore. Now we're being challenged way beyond our capability to defend ourselves with respect to the federal action, federal plan to run us through, as some people would say. But these are challenges that I think would have to be resolved somehow slowly, but persuasively and with confidence in the future. And as Eddie was saying, we are leaving it up to the new leadership in our government to resolve this in a way that I think properly organized and following the kind of strategy that the Marianas Political Standing Commission designed in our own particular effort would be quite useful. I do not want to take up any more of your time. I just want to say a couple more things. I agree that Mr. Williams' description of there are different kind of objectives that we set forth at the time when we sat down to start talking about our political future. Were pretty much the ones that were identified then, and I think we have accomplished quite a bit of those. I don't have any very specific axe to grind with the different parts of the puzzles, although I know that one area that I think that we need to focus on is immigration and the minimum wage authority of the local government under the grant of local self-government. These two aspects would and has actually already is already impacting on the well-being, the economic well-being of our islands, our community. If the United States is to federalize minimum wage, my personal feeling is that that's a very major critical intrusion into commitment for self-government. Although there is a provision in the covenant that says the U.S. may, the U.S. could, after termination of trusteeship, federalize. It doesn't mean that it can just do so unilaterally and without any consideration of the historical background as to how that provision was achieved. And the same thing goes with immigration. And as Mr. Williams had indicated, I agree with him 100%. Now, during the negotiation, there was really no major concern about immigration. I mean, the U.S. knew fully well that we are going to be bringing in non-resident workers because of the fact that our population was small, young, very young, 50% at that time of our population was below the age of 18. And so we expect to utilize non-resident workers to be able to expand all the funds that's coming from the federal government to build infrastructures and to provide services and other kinds of economic needs for the island. So there's no surprise at that time, and they shouldn't be surprised now. I think they are trying to relate our non-resident workers' problems with something else beyond what the covenant had anticipated, and this is where they're coming from. So I disagree with their mentality that they can take over and run us through, let's say, within 10 years, as somebody is proposing from Interior. And I think the rest of the puzzles are interesting. Some of them are very innocuous. They don't really concern me too much. They seem to be working out pretty good. There will always be problems on some of them, but that's what this covenant is all about. It's not a perfect document, and it was actually anticipated that it will be improved over the years, and a mechanism for such improvement was built into the covenant as part of the U.S. public law, and that's the mechanism of 902, and I believe 903, was it, the courts, Robert? Those two mechanisms are there for a purpose, and we have to have our people, our leadership, exercise that in a way that was anticipated during the negotiation. And again, lastly, I just want to express my thanks to the organizers of this forum and for giving me the opportunity to give you some of my historical perspective, historical recollection of what really went through. Thank you again.
Thank you, Pete. We'll now hear from Dave Sablan. David?
Thank you. I noticed that some of you are perhaps slumbering off or would like to close your eyes. So, as usual, I like to tell a joke, and I promise not to prolong the agony here. I promise to make my speech in 5 minutes and leave, okay? When I was graduating from high school in Guam, we invited some dignitaries to speak to the graduating class of George Washington. And we invited Congressman Wompat, we invited some other people, and this special guest from elsewhere, not Wompat, spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke, and pretty soon even the graduates started getting up and walking away from this whole ceremony. And what was left was Congressman Wampat, and this guy keeps on talking, and then after a while he says, you know, sir, you are a gentleman. You got the courage to sit there and wait until I finish. You are a gentleman. He says, what the hell are you talking about? This is what Congressman Wampat said. What the hell are you talking about? I'm the next speaker. So I'm glad you laughed. So what the hell are you talking about? I'm the next speaker, and I promise not to take up all the time that, the valuable time that other people should be talking about. Anyway, I want to thank the Council for the Humanities for inviting me. I really don't know why you invited me. I'm not a politician. I know a little bit about money management, but I don't know whether I fit into this whole situation or not. But anyway, since you invited me, I'll take the opportunity. They talk about 25 years of this hard work of becoming, you know, taking on this covenant. Looking around the table here, I noticed that I'm the oldest person in this room. Would you believe that? You don't believe it because I'm still growing. I grew through my hair, just like Mr. Khan over there, you're right. So anyway, soon after the passing away of Gregorio San Nicolas Sablan, better known as Kilili, my dad became the mayor in 1945. Since that time, we have been asking, we have been expressing our views to become part of the United States. Just exactly how we were going to approach that was something that we did not know, and it took so many years to get there. But the desire to become part of the United States was given birth since those days. My dad was the mayor for about 14 years, and he lost to another good politician, the late Benavente, Mayor Benavente, I think the grandfather of our speaker. But this is essentially what started all this political discussion. I'm bringing you back further because I feel that since being the oldest guy in the room here, you need to know where the genesis of this political status discussion was. And to set the record straight, I see Dr. Wallendorf has been taking notes. Please take that down, Doc, and put it in the history book. It's not funny, just write it down. Anyway, you know, in 1960, I was invited. I was living in Guam. I couldn't afford to go beyond high school, so I lived in Guam and slaved like hell to earn the money to support a family. And at that time, I was a very good friend of the Navy. They used to fly me up here every once in a while in their Navy airplane. So one day they said, well, we've been giving you all this free ride. Why don't you go up there and do something constructive? So in 1960, I came up here at the guest of the Saipan Chamber of Commerce, believe it or not. And and Joe Tan, the late Joe Tan, bless his soul, he said, Dave, while you're here, we're going to gather us some people so you can speak on the responsibility of a U.S. citizen towards his government. And I said, my God, that's a mouthful. I don't know if I could tackle that or not, you know. But anyway, as it ended up, we invited a whole mess of people, and the old Chalancanoa Church was the hall for the legislative body. And I appeared before them, and there was a jam-packed full of people. They want to hear what I was going to say about U.S. citizenship. Well, I didn't know too much about what I should talk, so I tacked on taxation. Believe it or not, that meeting that night ended up in a riot. We had to break out the fire trucks, the police, everybody were throwing rocks at each other. Joe Tan and Manny Villagomez grabbed me and he says, we better go before they eat you up here. So I ended up at Manny's home that night. The following evening, the Carolinian community said, we can't do that, you know. So they invited me to their root. And through the translation of my dad, you know, what my son is trying to tell you guys is that this is part of the responsibility of our democratic government. You got to support with the money that you make to, you know, to have a common tilt. And that's basically what, how the things went on. I never forget, and my dad, because of his chieftain rank, I guess, in the community, had to speak to a translator. And that was the late Abel Olapai's father, you know. And Louis can tell you that. And of course, the rest of us, the Sablon clan, my brothers and sisters, we're not politically inclined. We're more of a money mad than we are politicians. That's why I'm still in business. And many a times people urged me to run for office, but I chose not to. The Chamber of Commerce for many, many years have always urged the United Nations to give us over to the United States. And that was the only time that the Chamber, by the way, met. Every 2 years when the visiting mission came from the United Nations, Bill Neighbors and Dr. Vitarelli and Joe Tan and Manny would gather everybody and says, come on, let's go petition these guys and make us part of the United States. And that's basically how the whole chamber went. At one point in time, the Chamber of Commerce never met for 7 years. And that was, so Joe Tan became the president for 7 years. And so I told him one day, I said, Joe Tan, you know, you've been in the presidency too long, let's change. So he said, okay, this is about the golf course. He says, okay, now you're the president. I said, okay, I'll take it. And this was in 1967. And I revamped the chamber to where it is today. And in Holy Humility, I was the president for 3 years, and thank God I'm still the president, and I guess that's why I'm invited here. But thank God, you know, in a few days I'll be out just like, you know, anybody else who are running for office and lost the election. So, yeah, I got faxed out all right. Anyway, I just want to throw a little humor in today's meeting because it seems like everybody's so stiff. And I want to, again, thank you, the Council for the Humanities. Isaac, I have a great respect for you. Here's a young man that you ought to look at, you know. He started from rag to riches in wealth, not in wealth, but in education. He's an anthropologist, believe it or not. We like to have more of our people go to school so that they can be smart like me. Thank you.
Does anybody in here who thinks they're older than Dave Sablon, raise your hand if you think you are. You're right, nobody raised their hand, David. Maybe. We have one final commentator from the panel, and we did start about 15 minutes late, so we're almost on time here. We'll try to get brought up to time speed by giving our final panelist just a few brief moments more. He's been described as the historian on the panel here, Sam McPheeters.
It's a real tough act to follow. I would like to say how pleased I am to see the direction that this discussion has gone. Some of the things that have been said so far are brand new for the general public, the information that we have about the background of the negotiations. As an instructor in Mariana's history, I find this information is going to be invaluable in future classes. Brief. I would like to correct a statement made by Howard earlier about the federal grants that come out to the Northern Marianas. They actually average closer to $60 million a year and above, and have for the last several years. I would like to reinforce his comment about the need for realism. We need to look at the covenant as a realistic document, not as something that's what we would like to see. You need to read it for what it is, what it means, and take it for what it is. And one of those things is that the citizenship. One of the problems I have had in many years as a teacher here at the college is getting the students to recognize that we're all Americans. I would give them a questionnaire, say, what's your name, your address, and your citizenship. And initially, invariably, they would write down Chamorro or Carolinian. And when I say, no, you and I are both Americans. For some kids, these were fighting words. They're absolutely not. I mean, you're white, you're Americano. I'm not. Well, I'm pleased to note that over the last couple of years, this has changed enormously. But I think as areas where the chart here indicates the issue of understanding citizenship is still not complete. And that's for a variety of reasons, going back to how it was granted in 1986 and the lack of preparation for it and some of the things that have taken place since, and I won't go into that now. The other thing I'd like to note very briefly is that Howard mentioned three main reasons for people going for separation from the rest of Micronesia and for the Commonwealth. And I'd like to add a fourth one, and that is what the people of Northern Marianas did not want. As an observer of the situation here during the negotiations and one who was involved in the political education program since its inception in the Trust Territory, it occurred to me very early on that one of the things that the people here did not want was Micronesian unity. And that's because of the unique history of the Marianas since the Spanish times. It created a whole different personality than the other parts of Micronesia. And I think this is very important to keep in mind when we talk about that. The last thing I'd like to note, if there is any problem resolving from the covenant, one of those problems is the fact that the covenant does not show up in any American history books or American civics books or any American classes. People in the States don't know what the covenant is, what the Commonwealth is, and we have an enormous number of problems based on people coming out here who are suddenly discovering for the first time that this isn't the way it was back home. And as a result, we have certain misinterpretations and other problems resulting from this. So I'm hoping that one of these days we will be able to convince the mainland American educational institutions to include the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. I think we'd go a long way with that. With that, I will stop because I know this afternoon we have a lot more to go over. Thank you.
Are the two wireless mics on? Are they working? At this time, we'll move into some discussion from those of you in the audience. If you have a question, I would like to ask that you step to one of the two microphones that are in the center aisles and direct your question to a member of the panel, to include our presenter, Mr. Willens, or anyone else on the panel that you would like to respond. Again, keeping in mind the questions that were asked at the outset of the discussion here, and that is to evaluate the covenant in terms of the past 20 years. Has it worked? Has the CNMI lived up to its responsibilities? Has the federal government lived up to its responsibilities? And some of the other comments with regard to Mr. Willens' presentation earlier this morning. So who would like to begin the audience portion of the dialogue? Dr. Ballendorf?
And that's why in my presentation, I said that that's a major philosophical difference between federal government and ourselves, as expressed by Mr. Stamen, because they cannot understand, they cannot agree to a situation where the temporary non-resident workers outnumber the permanent resident population. But we have to, I want to know why. Why is that so bad? What's so wrong about it? We've never lied or represented to the non-resident workers that their stay here will entitle them to citizenship eventually, or that they will have the right to permanent residency status. We've never publicized that. They've always been classified as non-resident temporary workers. I'd like to be able to sit down with the federal government and explain that to them and say, wait, well, why do you find that so outrageous? Maybe it's because of their own history, like I said, their own labor history also. Yes. What was it during the times of the Manifest Destiny, when the railroads were being expanded and the Chinese workers were brought in and they were given citizenship eventually? Maybe that's the kind of history that they want us also to have. But like some panelists have mentioned, and I think Howard stated it himself also, that perhaps the federal government has to start thinking in terms of the unique insular area environment. So I don't think we're kidding ourselves or lying to ourselves in terms of what the problem is. I think we realize what the problem is, or at least what for one side considers it a problem. As far as I'm concerned personally, I'm not so sure that it is a problem. And that's why I'd like to sit down and talk about it. Maybe the former Lieutenant Governor has something else to say.
Very, very briefly, I like what the Lieutenant Governor says as far as the the history of the development of America, and people, the Americans, express great pride in saying that America is the melting pot of the world. America is comprised of multi-racial groups of people, and it became strong because of the numerous ethnic groups that migrated to America seeking for opportunities and security and among other things. Now look at Hawaii, for example. Hawaii was developed by immigrants. They were the Hawaiians there, but they were the minority, and then they brought in these sugarcane workers, the Japanese from Japan and other nationalities, the Chinese. They came in and become successful, become politicians and businessmen and so forth. I don't really think that there's anything very unusual that we are experiencing as far as non-resident workers' presence out here. One of the biggest differences that we have that is, between us and Hawaii, for example, is that the non-immigrant, the workers there, the so-called foreign workers, eventually became immigrants, and they were given the status of a permanent resident and citizenship. So, again, let me ask you a question. Is it quantity of non-resident workers that is worrisome, troublesome, or is it ethnic background? I mean, we are going to be needing people here so long as there is a job demand for them. And if there aren't job demands, then we don't need them. And why should we continue to keep them here? Their legal status here has to do with their contracts, one-year contract, provided there are jobs, and there are no jobs. And maybe we're talking about administrative malfunction or misgivings, and maybe this is where the problem is, that there are some that should not be here. We often hear of illegal aliens, the presence of a large number of illegal aliens. So we are probably talking about administrative control in trying to ensure that only those that are needed and legitimately here, legally here, that are helping the community should be allowed to stay on, and others that are not should be deported. And I agree with that 100%. And this has been a very, very difficult effort by the previous administrations. The last 4 governments of our Commonwealth have tried their best to do this. At the same time, there are also competing interests of the business community, and let's face it, people tend to exaggerate their needs for alien workers. Not only needs, but economic aspect of it. They would advertise a position for $5 or $3.50 for a civil engineer. That's ridiculous. And I've seen enough clippings in the newspaper that a big corporation advertising a need for civil engineers, $4 an hour. I mean, these are graduate people with degrees in the sciences, and they are being, somewhat attempting to recruit them for $4 an hour. The purpose of that particular type of recruitment or advertising for recruitment is to discourage resident workers and others from applying for a job because the salary was too low. And this is a scam, and I don't like that. See?
I agree. You said it yourself. The system is a scam. The CNMI government has a firm grip on the way it depresses wages in controlling immigration, non-resident worker. It has a firm grip on that. Wages will never go up because we continue to bring in non-resident workers, unlimited, unchecked. The minute you place a cap, the minute you place a ceiling, the doors are open for you as citizens, people from Guam. And that's the fear that I sense coming from the former Washington rep. Are we so afraid of bringing in so many people from the state sites? I mean, I have my mom in Guam who don't want to come here because she doesn't like it. She makes more money and a better living in Guam. That's a choice. Yes, I agree. There are people, there are success stories where businesses bring in people from the mainland. And they're here, and they're working. Wages will never go up if we continue to keep clamping down. It's not like a floor, like the minimum wage thing, where it's a floor. It's more like a grip down to hold it, so that, like you said, residents and U.S. citizens will not come here and work for engineering jobs or whatever, professionals. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just add that it has been argued by some economists, and this came up in one of our previous panels, that the insistence on the maintaining of the ability to bring in low-cost alien or non-resident worker labor actually works to the long-term negative interest of the indigenous people of the CNMI, because of that exact reason he just stated, that acts to keep wages down in the community overall. And that's not my opinion. That was an opinion that was put forward in one of our previous panel discussions by someone with an economist background, that the ultimate long-term effect is actually negative on the indigenous population. And there is some evidence today already that that has been the case. Would anyone else like to ask a question as we move along to another topic? John?
John, can I?
Yes, I'm sorry. Sure.
I'm sorry. I just want to add to the discussion and not belabor the issue. In 1985, Maria Pangilinan and I were very fortunate to be members of the second constitutional deliberation. At that time, we were in a committee deliberating on the very specific item on the non-resident workers. And for Maria and I, it was very real at that time in terms of the longevity and the desire for outside laborers. At that time, we also were instrumental in proposing that we have a cap in terms of forcing our government here at home to realistically plan for when we will see the day that we minimize the need for outside help and increase the participation of our local people. That has implication in terms of how we educate and the kinds of resources that we put into, honestly, educate our people in the most meaningful way to take over the kinds of jobs that are necessary for the economy to continue to thrive. Unfortunately, we're amongst business people, and they, in their wisdom, saw that it would be a downfall to cap that. It would be a downfall on the economy, the growing economy of the CNMI, and therefore we were not given the privilege of pushing this question to the people. But that question was highly debated and talked about, and I hope that our leaders will see the need to really take some hard steps to begin to put some pressure in ourselves to really live up to the expectations of our forefathers. Thank you.
John Oliver?
Thanks. I have a question with regards to land alienation. Earlier this morning, I basically tossed out a general question of, are there areas within the covenant that need fine-tuning? Land alienation, perhaps, in my observation, of course, serving in the Third Constitutional Convention, was a concern and is still a concern. Section 805 of Article 8 of the covenant stipulates that the Northern Mariana Islands, its peoples, I guess generally the Enemi descent at the time, would have control of their lands until after 25 years that the trusteeship agreement is officially terminated. That's 25 years. My question is, what led to 25 years? Why 25 years? To the extent, based on my readings, my research at the time, of the need for the United States to grant us that special condition, perhaps because it was our identity, as Dr. Rita Ines said, and our culture, to the extent that they bought or they were convinced that it was crucial for us to have that privilege. Why wasn't it permanent, as Lieutenant Governor Bohr has said, that the implication perhaps was that it was a permanent agreement? mutual consent? Why wasn't it made equally permanent? Why 25 years? I'm concerned because our generation, again, would be at the forefront of this challenge, would be in our agenda, primary agenda. 25 years would be what, 2011? That's about 14 years from now. Why 25 years? Why not permanent, number one? Number two, what is my generation going to do? Are there tidbits that we can get from you, the Founding Fathers? What are we supposed to do? What recommendations are you going to give us? Are we going to have a plebiscite on it and then present it to the United States government for its mutual consent and whatnot? I don't know. So I'm not a lawyer, so I need to know why 25 years, why not permanent, and what are we to do when the time comes? Because I personally want it permanent.
And
Thank
the
you.
time is coming. Mr. Willens.
Okay. John, thank you for the question. Of course, if you'd followed certain advice of some foster fathers, you'd be in law school and done by now. But I understand from you that year is coming. Let's be clear about this. The provision in the covenant provides that the Northern Marianas is required to limit alienation of land to persons of Northern Marianas descent for 25 years from the end of the trusteeship agreement. So John is correct that the year is 2011. But the point is this, that requirement of it was 25 years because it was thought that ultimately the next generation of the Northern Marianas people might not want to have those restrictions on land alienation. And it was thought that ultimately it should be a decision for the Northern Marianas people to make, not for the United States government. So at the end of 25 years, the restrictions currently contained in Article 12 of the Northern Marianas Constitution will remain in effect. They will remain in effect until changed. So if there's no constitutional convention and no legislative initiative to amend Article 12 to eliminate those restrictions, they will remain in effect so long as the people here want them to. So I do not think that the year 2011 presents any threat to the younger generation. It will mean that they will have a chance to consider themselves whether they want to continue those restrictions, and if so, all they have to do is leave that provision in the Constitution unamended.
Pete Tenorio, comment?
Yeah, thank you. As I remember the proceedings in our negotiations, the members of the Marianas Political Status Commission sat down and did a very thorough discussion among ourselves on the issue of land alienation. It wasn't a one-sided position on our part. We had disagreed among ourselves as to whether or not this provision is good in the long run or the short run or bad. Some of us believed at that time or thought at that time that this is unfair. Land alienation means that you cannot sell your land to anyone other than Northern Marianas descent. Now comes the economic question of, what if somebody else on the outside who is not a non-CNMI descent has $1 million and the CNMI descent has $20,000 and the other guy wants to buy your land? I mean, aren't you denying, a basic fundamental right of that person to sell at to the highest bidder? So there are people there that have different positions as far as the land alienation provision. It's not one that is fully endorsed by everybody. And we had a very long debate on this issue. We finally come up, the majority of us, as Ed was saying, we had a very consensual type of approach to problems, and we gave in. Some of us gave in. Some of us that were more economic informed, more experienced in the economics of land, felt that, gee, only the rich CNMI descent would be able to control all of the land holdings because we are denying non-CNMI descent that have more money to buy. And there are two questions, two different positions developed here. And secondly, I thought that, if I remember correctly, again, we discussed the issue under the so-called assumption that after 25 years, and this was no joke, that, you know, people would be more mature, would recognize the value of land much more then, because there'll be less land, and they'll be more careful in, you know, in selling their land out to anybody. So they wanted to, at least 25 years is a period where they would be so conscious of the land that there's no need to protect them anymore under the land alienation provision of the covenant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here who believes that the covenant is not the best way to go for the next 20 or 25 years of the future of the CNMI? Is there anyone here who believes that either free association or independence is a better way to go? And if so, would they care to comment on that? Mr. Speaker, go ahead. Pete?
I always like to talk about sensitive issues for discussion, okay?
Okay.
The former Lieutenant Governor mentioned earlier that when they went out to negotiate for this relationship, they were negotiating it for the Northern Marianas Descent. As it turns out now, and I will mention again, I'm not saying that American citizens should not vote. I'm bringing that thing up. You know, when I was in the legislature, I feel that the 45 days requirement to be registered and to vote is a threat to the CNMI sovereign right to govern themselves internally. At any rate, I was told that it was unconstitutional to bring, you know, from 45 days to 10 years. What about 5 years? Doesn't matter anyway. If any one of you sitting up there can guarantee me that the political control will continue to rest in the hands, the decision-making of the Commonwealth will continue to be in the hands of the Northern Marianas Descent, as provided for in the covenant, then I will stay with the covenant. But I can say my personal opinion based on what is happening, I don't think so. You see, the Chamorro and the Carolinians, they have the right to be identified way into the future as people, as Chamorro, as Carolinians, as Northern Marianas descent. We're going to lose out on that identification under the present relationship. The continuous interference from the federal government, especially from the administration, and the younger generation who choose not to understand the covenant in the United States Congress, it simply means that in the future, which is happening right now, our statement wants to be governor. He wants to come and tell us what to do. And that is exactly what is going to happen in the future if people in Washington are not educated to be able to understand and to be able to live and work with the people of the Commonwealth and respect all the provisions that are provided for in the covenant. So, John, it is an important question, and I say that as a Carolinian and as a Chamorro, as a Northern Marianas descent, I'm afraid that I am an endangered species. And I'm going to lose out that identity pretty fast, whether you have the control of the immigration to the United States government or we continue to control the immigration one way or the other. It's like cars, they are driving very fast to the stoplight, and one is driving very slowly, but it gets to the stoplight, and it's going to happen. Under the present situation where you allow only 45 days for any American citizens to come in and vote, in the future, because of the economic benefits that the CNMI offers, we will be outnumbered. And so therefore, we will lose control of our political identification to be able to decide for ourselves. Now, if we look at the free associated state of Micronesia, hey, They are members of the United Nations. They have ambassadors in other countries. They are recognized, respected. It reminds me one time when I was in Washington, I have to have a pass to go into the White House. The guy from the favorite state of Micronesia just show his ID card and walk in. It simply means that, and that is the future generation to decide, and that's why I'm saying that a political education is important to allow the future generation to decide whether they want a free associated state where they will govern themselves as long as they are in there, or to continue with this and continue the headache of trying to explain to newcomers in Washington why this relationship is put together.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you very much. Question for Mr. Woodlands, technical question. Is the 45 days, that's local law, you could make that a year? Could that be made 5 years? I mean, is there some sort of federal standard for how long you have to live somewhere before you can vote there?
Yes, basically there is. It's been attested in the courts on numerous occasions, and the legal advice that the former speaker got was essentially correct, that 45 days is the longest period that has been sustained as a period of required residency in order to obtain the right to vote.
My second question goes back to something that Pete said earlier. He used the phrase limited sovereignty. Who has sovereignty over the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and is there such a thing legally as limited sovereignty?
Well, I was hoping that question would not come up. There is no such thing as internal sovereignty, and the people who've been espousing that here in the Commonwealth for the last decade have been grossly misinformed and have disserved the Commonwealth in the strongest possible terms. The covenant controls. The covenant gives sovereignty to the United States within any meaning of that word, by any dictionary, by any rule of international law that's been in effect for centuries. So the question is, what is the degree of self-government within the Commonwealth? That is the critical issue. That is defined by the covenant. The former speaker's correct. There's ambiguity in that. How far does it reach? What are the limitations on federal authority? What does mutual consent mean in this context? And I tried to explain that earlier today. But I think it's very important to realize that there's only one concept of sovereignty that's pertinent here, and that is that sovereignty rests with the United States, and that the Marianas voluntarily and intelligently believed that it was better for them over the long term to become part of the United States and to endure both the benefits and the disadvantages of U.S. sovereignty in order to lead a productive and fruitful lives. So the question of internal self-government is a separate question, and as I mentioned earlier, and the reason why I think the law has changed in the benefit of to the benefit of the Commonwealth in the last decade, since that debate was so heated then, is that the courts have now held that the covenant does control and the covenant does limit federal authority here in the Commonwealth. So if that's what people mean by they saying that the Commonwealth has authority over local affairs, I agree with that. But I do think that using the word internal or phrase internal sovereignty is confusing, and I don't think really helps explain the relationship between the federal government and the Commonwealth.
Anyone else on the panel with a comment on that general discussion?
I would.
All right.
Thank you, John. You know, the federal government, it has been described as a government of enumerated powers. That is, they have powers specifically given to it by the Constitution. If it's not in the Constitution, it doesn't have it. So in order for the federal government to validly make a claim to the Commonwealth, it had to pick on a constitutional provision as to where it was getting its power to get into the Commonwealth. Now, Howard has stated earlier, and I don't entirely agree with him, but it can be discussed for the legal niceties of it, but it's not really relevant for purposes of the future of our political relationship. And that is that it's based on the territorial clause. I don't agree with that entirely. Because if you say that, then of course, there was a speaker earlier this morning, under the territorial clause, Congress has plenary powers over any territory that it has jurisdiction over. But the important thing, I think, to remember in our relationship with the United States is that, yes, it's sovereign. It has plenary powers under that term, as Howard stated, has been well used in the past and everybody knows the meaning of. But it agreed to limit the use of its plenary powers in the covenant. And that is the provision that I think we should capitalize on, if you can use the word, so that we use that for purposes of our own development. We have local government, and to answer the question that Howard asked earlier in the morning session, in the puzzle that he presented, the jigsaw puzzle, I think the biggest problem we have under those the 17 provisions would be local self-government. How do you define that? Where does local self-government end and sovereignty begin, or vice versa? What I may consider to be purely local, the federal government may think is a federal question. And that's where I think our problems are going to be in terms of trying to negotiate, compromise, so that the substance of local self-government is still there. Now, there are certain issues that everybody seems to agree is purely local, but I submit to you that it's not. What could be more local than the issue of land? And yet we've got land cases going to the Ninth Circuit. These are the kinds of issues that I think are going to haunt us, or well, it's going to cost us more losing of hair. Where's David? but they're concerns that they're challenges, maybe is the better word, that we're going to be faced with in the future.
David went to get a haircut. We have time for one more question. Another David. Speaking of haircuts.
First of all, with respect to the dilution of indigenous control of the body politic in the Northern Marianas vis-a-vis non-indigenous Americans, in Guam, which has no restriction and many, many years of non-indigenous Americans able to participate in local politics, you do see an occasional non-indigenous face in the Guam legislature. But in general, from my standpoint at least, it seems that the indigenous people of Guam still have reasonably effective control over their local government, to the extent that they have any control, because their local government is strictly a construct of the Department of the Interior. But to the extent that they do have local voting, I don't see a major dilution there. And I hope, Pete, that your fears do not bear fruit, because certainly, even though part of the American system, the very special nature of the culture here and the way in which the Northern Marianas joined the United States would suggest that there ought to be, in general, control by local people, without excluding other Americans from elsewhere from the opportunity to participate in politics. That being said, I think that what Howard Willens and Ed Pangilinan said regarding the importance of keeping local control for immigration far transcends the economic issues with respect to non-resident workers. It is the only thing standing between the indigenous people and other Americans and being overrun in one generation perhaps by new Americans who naturalize here and decide to stay here and basically take over the Commonwealth. So the need to control local immigration far transcends the economic issues. With respect to the economic issues, and I'm speaking now as a former Director of Commerce and Labor and as an economist who has lost several of my hairs agonizing over the issue of non-resident workers, I appreciated the remarks of both Lieutenant Governors who are on our panel today. I agree with the current Lieutenant Governor that it is not reasonable to set an arbitrary cap over the use of temporary workers. I would hate to have any of you tell the next builder of a hotel that he can't open his hotel because he can't get any workers and we can't supply them. That being said, it is quite clear, as both the former Lieutenant Governor and Oscar have said, that the current system of searching for resident workers is a complete scam. And it's set up that way, and that's unfortunate. Right now, Americans, including indigenous Americans, have to compete with Asians at Asian wage rates for jobs in the Northern Mariana Islands. This is a choice that has been made. It can end. You can pass laws that require businesses to search for Americans, including indigenous Americans, at wages in which Americans compete with Americans, and where the skills are resident here, where those Americans can find jobs at prevailing wages or better. And this is the system in the U.S. The system in the U.S. takes it a step further, which is somewhat ridiculous. It then requires that if there is no American available, that they bring in the foreigner at those same wage rates. That's unnecessary. If we have a good enough policing of this, we can require prevailing wage to be offered to Americans, and not finding it, bring in others at a lower expense. There are ways to do this. The important thing is it's your choice, not that it be the U.S. choice. This be your choice. If you want to be overrun temporarily with temporary workers, as Jesse has said, that may not be a problem. The fact that there is a majority may not be a problem. That's your own social choice. Why should it be the American government in Washington's choice how many people you allow here? And it's interesting to note that in 1990, 91, I guess, the number of resident workers dropped when the bubble burst, and a lot of people went home. Now it's built up again because our economy, fortunately, has risen in the last few years. But we proved that we will send people home. I'd like to shift for just a moment to the eloquent remarks of the former speaker with respect to the Department of the Interior that he made this
I will remind you as you shift that we are almost out of time.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. Anybody who thinks the Department of Interior has your interests at heart should look at their record with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Native Americans. Clearly they don't. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there is not the word interior in the covenant at all. The only reason Interior has anything to do with the Northern Marianas right now is because of an executive order that gave Interior fallback authority over the islands for those issues that didn't apply to any other agency. That has been honored in the breach. Interior has overstepped far beyond that executive order and is now coordinating what every agency does instead of us being able to deal fully directly. My question for the panel is this. It has come up several times. Is the Northern Mariana Islands prepared, as Puerto Rico has done, to break loose from Interior? There's always been this fear, well, maybe we need somebody looking out for us. Are we now prepared to go to Washington in 902 or something like that and say, we don't want to deal through Interior anymore. We want to have a relationship with the executive branch the same way that Puerto Rico does. We work with all the agencies as a little coordinating committee. And are we willing to step out from that umbrella and let go of the Great White Father in Interior? I don't know, but it's a question for the people here. Clearly, the real decision makers in the federal government, under the territorial clause, the only people who can really affect what happens here is the Congress of the United States. But we have to deal with the executive branch. What do you people think we should do in the future? Stay with Interior or break loose from Interior? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Would anybody care to respond to that very briefly?
Joe?
Yes, Pete?
I would simply say, based on my bad experience with Interior, that definitely, since 12 years ago, we should have severed our relationship with them. They're not serving any useful purpose, my own personal and objective opinion. They rather than helping us, they're hurting us. And rather than being advocates of our development and policies out here, they are the disruptive force that's trying to drag us down. That's my feeling, and I feel that as soon as Interior is taken out of the jurisdiction, overseeing the CNMI, the better for everybody.
In favor of what other department of the government?
Well,
federal government?
we could try and deal directly with the president's office like what Puerto Rico was subject under when a White House staffer was assigned to handle the Puerto Rican problem. And that did not create, I haven't read anything so bad about that particular office of.
You're talking about a
affair.
desk, a White House desk
A
for
desk,
Puerto
a
Rican
coordinator
affairs?
of some sort.
You're talking
that
about
would-
Jeff Farrow's
yeah.
role that he had there?
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, Puerto Rico, there is an interagency committee. I think it's, the secretariat is in the Commerce Department, but in effect, there is a trade-off, as John is saying. If you go into the White House, you do have your Jeff Farrows and others that have other agendas that are also not necessarily in the best interest of the Northern Marianas. But I tend to agree
In
with
fact, the
you,
White
Pete.
House becomes an even
Yeah.
more political entity than the Interior Department.
I think that's good because we got more politicians than CNMI too, so we can deal with them on a hand-to-hand basis. Last comment I want to make is that the Interior again was selected to oversee the CNMI, administratively, only, as I understand it, for budgetary purpose. But we had so many of them that were former Peace Corps volunteers and former staffers of the Congress that really loved the Northern Marianas, and they'll do anything to stay within the some desk that has something to do with the CNMI, so they can come and continue to visit us out here and be warm and play golf and have parties and fiestas. And this is a reality of being a federal worker. They like to get out of Washington when it's too cold. I mean, certainly they don't want to go to Alaska. They want to come here. So there is another vested interest that is very much not expressed, but really a reality in Washington. And that is why when you talk about Interior and having Congress strike, take away their so-called relationship with the CNMI, they resisted it, for CNMI and Guam especially, because the winters out here are much more comfortable.
I might point out that some of us liked it so well out here, we got out of the Interior Department and stayed here playing golf all the time. Is there one more question? If it comes from a woman, I'll accept one more question. Mrs. Hofschneider, would you step to the microphone, please?
Thank you, John. Basically, just based on the very short time that I've been here, we understand, I think everybody have a good grip of where the problem is, how we're dealing with the problems, and now we're trying to struggle on what to do with them. My question then to everybody in the room is, how committed are you? So that when you are appointed and say, look, former Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, I would like to appoint you to do this, you will not bow out and say, well, this is the wrong party, so I have to step down and give it to the spoil system. Rather just say, it's the right thing to do it. As painful as these experiences have been, it's time to swallow that. It's time to face up to it and say, let's just do it because it's the right thing to do. And stop the pointing fingers. The federal did this, the CNMI did this, you did that, I did it. Let's just stop and just say, in this room, how committed are we in our personal lives to make this Commonwealth a better place to live? I don't want to hear excuses like, I supported the last governor and yada, yada, yada. It's the right thing to do. Just do it. Very simply, just do it. We've got a lot of plans, like Sam was saying, they're all gathering dust. I don't think, we have to go beyond the planning. We have to go beyond the tomorrow. What are we going to do about it? Tomorrow. What are we going to do about it? I challenge everybody to this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think on that note we can wrap up and conclude. Let me ask Isaac or Ron who you would like to have. Herman, okay, to give the concluding comments on behalf of the Council for the Humanities.
Before we leave, I'd like to remind the audience to submit a copy of their comments if it's not too much of a trouble. It has been a rather lively discussions about the covenant, and the council is elated about the participants, as well as a lot of the comments of the panelists, and also our guest presenter, Mr. Willens. I am sure that the future, our leaders of the Commonwealth will look at the issues, and I think there's a lot of good suggestions, recommendations of things to right the problems or challenges, as they put it, that we're being faced here in the Commonwealth. We hope that the leaders, and I'm always been rather disappointed that our leaders in the legislature always seems to boycott our this forum, and I think there are also the key people that needs to participate in this kind of forum. But I would like to extend our appreciation on behalf of the Humanities Council to our presenter, Mr. Willens, John Anderson, our moderator, our panelists, composing from the different sectors and different areas in the community, the founding fathers of the Covenant, people that have been in government, educators, historians, as well as those that opposed the Covenant initially. I also would like to extend our appreciation for the Governor-elect Pedro Tenorio for taking the time, and I think it's a good sign that perhaps you'll be faced with a lot of challenges in the future in terms of our problems that we're facing. And I don't think we need, as a lot of the panelists mentioned, we don't need to point fingers. I think we need to acknowledge where we are and just say, hey, we do perhaps have problems, but we can still solve our own problems. So once again, on behalf of the Humanities Council, thank you very much for your participation in this forum.